somebody, yeah, I just came from the DDA meeting.
Gotcha.
So over there for, yeah, good meeting. Lots of good stuff happening. Speaking of winter, we just approved funding for the World of Winter.
Oh, very nice.
So weird to do in July, but.
You have to. I'm
Yeah.
surprised for an event like that, I would imagine it's like the second after it ends.
Yeah, they start planning it.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have some great installations this year.
Mm-hmm.
International, beautiful, large scale.
And you got our prize coming up very
In
soon.
September. I know. Be busy.
Gonna be a lot. Awesome. So we should be all set.
Okay.
First question, pretty standard. Can you say and spell your name for us?
Yes, Rosalynn Bliss. It's Rosalynn, Bliss.
And Mayor of Grand Rapids.
Mayor of Grand Rapids.
It's been an eventful couple of months, especially when it comes to the meetings that allow the decisions to get made.
Yeah.
Last night was not the first time that you've had demonstrators at those meetings. Can you take us back to the first time that demonstrators showed up and then through to today? What's your reaction seeing people come out in crowds, yelling, and all of that?
Yeah. We've had months now of individuals coming to our city commission meetings who are very passionate about a number of issues, sometimes experiencing and wanting to express their anger and outrage. And a city commission meeting, it's an official city business meeting, but our hope is to create a space where people, regardless of what they want to share with us, they feel that they have an opportunity to do that.
Do you feel that you can create that space if meetings end early?
Yeah, it's been a hard balance, I would say. I don't want to adjourn meetings. I don't want to have to remind people not to scream or intimidate or threaten other people who are speaking that they may not agree with. But the reality is my job is to ensure that there's order and decorum of the space so that people can be heard, so that people can feel safe expressing whatever they want to express. So part of my job as chair is to enforce those rules. And at some point, I have to make a decision. Do I continue to have people removed or do I adjourn? And if we've gotten through the city business, so how our agenda is set up is that at the beginning of the meeting we have all of our action items, and then at the end we have open comments. So by the time we get to open comments, the official business of the city has already been done. So then it's my decision to end public comment. Under the standing rules, I can do that, or to adjourn, or to, when someone is being disruptive, ask them to leave.
So the decision to end, what goes into that? I mean, the thought of ending public comment, do you think that it's fair to say these people have spoken, the rest of the people who want to voice their opinions don't get the chance of the time?
Yeah, it's a hard one. It's a hard decision to make. So if I have if there's a lot of people in line, I do my best not to adjourn and to address the disruption that's taking place. There's just a number, every meeting is so different. Every meeting is different because you have, just different dynamics and different people present. I try to be very clear at the beginning of every meeting what the protocols are for the meeting. I try to be very clear about, this is the process. I will ask you to stop being disruptive. I will ask you to leave. If you don't leave, I will ask the security to escort you out. I remind everyone that a breach of peace is against the law. It's a misdemeanor under state law because these are official assemblies of the elected body. So I do my best to be very, very clear about not just expectations about what will happen, and then I try to follow through with those. And at some point I have to decide based on not just the individual who's being disruptive, but the level of disruption, if it is going to be more challenging to get order back into the space or to adjourn. So if we're close to the end of the night and there's no one left in line or only one or two people left in line, if it gets very disruptive, then I will adjourn. Just for the safety of everyone, quite frankly.
So it's easy enough to, easy might not be the right word, but it seems like there is, process in place for people who attend the meeting and may end up getting out of hand or are causing frustration or whatever it might be. Last night we saw one of the council members expressing frustration and getting up and walking out. what does that show you as the person who is, leading this meeting, keeping that peace, keeping things in order? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, it's challenging, quite frankly. But the reality is, I think it's human nature for people to get frustrated. I see it in people who attend our meetings, and I don't expect my colleagues to not have that human element, right? But my expectation is, regardless of whether you're sitting with me around the table for, either city staff or elected officials or individuals who come into the space, my expectation is that you are respectful to other people. And so, that's my expectation, and I try to model that. I try to be as fair and respectful as possible, even when a lot of comments are being directed at me. I try not to take them personal. It's part of being in this seat and being the mayor of our city. And so I do my best during those meetings to try to manage that and keep the focus on the fact that this is a time, not the only time, as I try to remind people, this is a time for people to come and be heard. And regardless of whether you agree with the person who is speaking at the podium to their elected body, they have a right to be heard. And they have a right to speak and not be interrupted, not be screamed at, not be criticized, not be threatened. And that is becoming more and more challenging because there's a number of folks who have a very difficult time just respecting other people who don't think like them.
And I want to ask about Mr. O'Connor getting up and walking out. As an elected official, what message does that send of you have the ability to call the meeting and adjourn it, for him to get up and walk out and to do it so loudly and so brashly?
Yeah.
What message does that send to the people that are there, to the people that are watching at home, or the people that get to vote?
Yeah, I can't speak for Commissioner O'Connor. And quite frankly, I hear from a lot of different people in this community who are very frustrated with the level of incivility that currently exists in our city commission meetings. Excuse me. I've heard from people in our community who used to come to our meetings who say, I'm not coming again because I don't feel safe in this space anymore. And I need to respect that as well. So I'm sure there's a lot of different opinions about Commissioner O'Connor's decision to leave the meeting last night. I can't speak for everyone. But again, my expectation, and I'll just speak for myself, I'm there, I will sit with people and listen to them regardless of how frustrated they are, how angry they are, and I will do my best to be as respectful as possible, and I do expect that of others as well.
I want to ask specifically about last night. There were those 3 arrests. Do you know what those charges are going to be?
I don't. So last night I asked people to leave. They didn't leave. They were escorted out, and I continued the meeting. And again, that is my ultimate goal. I don't want people to be asked to leave the meeting, and I don't want to adjourn it. So I try my best to continue and keep the meeting going for those who are wanting to be heard, those who have something to share, those who have concerns, they have questions, they have city services that they aren't happy with that we need to respond to. And so last night I kept the meeting going once the individuals were outside of the chambers.
And then for those people who are, screaming and at the meetings to disrupt or are disrupting at those meetings, there's a thought in my head of something that we've heard from a lot of these protesters, whether it be about abortion rights or police changes or funding or anything like that we've seen and heard marching through the streets for the past 2 months, that we have been trying to play the game by the rules that are set, and it didn't work. Now we're going to play outside of those to make sure our voices are heard. What would you say to that?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for how they feel. I respect how they feel. Changing systems is really tough work. Creating change in any system is tough work. It doesn't happen overnight. I think, and I've always respected people's right to protest. And I think there's a really important role that plays in our society. But when it comes to creating change and pushing through changes, it's hard work, and some people may not see the change right away because it doesn't happen overnight. But I do believe that change is happening, and we are moving in the right direction. Not as quickly as some people would like, but there is meaningful change happening to move our city forward, to reach our goals, to be a safe city for everyone, to be a great place to live, to be a place where people can start a business and thrive. And so to me, my perspective is I try to always look at, what are we trying to accomplish holistically? And I recognize how all the different elements of the work that we're doing play together, whether it's the work around public safety or affordable housing or public transportation or economic development. And I know those are interconnected. So just focusing on one department, to me, isn't the solution to creating change. And I respect that people don't always feel like that is exactly what they want. And quite frankly, there are some things that protesters want that I just don't agree with. I don't agree with defunding the police. I've been very clear about that since people started calling for defunding over 2 years ago. And I've said, to me, defunding police is not the answer. Reducing funding to one department doesn't create a safer community. And so sometimes I just think people are frustrated when the people who are elected don't agree with what they want. And that could easily be perceived as, I tried to play by the rules and it didn't work. But the reality is sometimes there's just not support for one idea. But there's, in my opinion, support for a whole host of other ideas that I believe will move us forward when it comes to police reform. Are there going to be auxiliary meetings held? Since we've seen many times public comment get cut short or meetings adjourned. Yeah, so I also have heard from a lot of folks, and I agree with this, that we want spaces where we can come together and have more meaningful dialogue. And we are working on setting those up now. So likely in August, September, October, we'll go out and do some ward meetings and some smaller table conversations with both elected officials and community members. But we're also working with our communications and engagement department to look at other ways that we can better engage and connect. City commission meetings aren't set up to be this back and forth dialogue. They never have been. It's an opportunity for us to listen and for people to be heard. And there's lots of ways that elected officials connect with people in the community to have conversations. We go to community meetings, we go to community events, we have one-on-one conversations with folks. People email us, they call us, they text us sometimes. So there's lots of ways that we're interacting and communicating with community members. Quite frankly, I'd say more so outside of city commission meetings than anything. Is there anything that is as public as those meetings? Yeah, there's a lot of community events that we attend, and then, as I said, we'll be setting up these ward meetings coming up over the next few months. And then the last question I've got, just what is, the community is looking on and seeing meeting after meeting after meeting having incidents occur. Mm-hmm. Some from purely outside of the elected officials, some from the elected officials themselves, or a combination of both. What message do you have to the people that are watching at 5 and 6 o'clock and see this and are just kind of unsure what to think or what to make of any of this? Yeah. Well, my hope is that we get back to a space where we can have commission meetings where people can come and speak their mind and feel safe doing it. And I'll continue to work with my colleagues, but also continue to do what I can as chairing the meeting to make that happen. And I recognize that we're in a season where there's still a lot of strong feelings and a lot of outrage that people are feeling. And so I want to create a space where that can be expressed, but I also want to do it in a way that other people who attend our meetings feel safe. And I'll continue to work on that. I've always said I'm a big believer that life is about learning, and so after every meeting, I take time to think about what I could have done differently, what I could have done better. Never have I said that I'm perfect. I've never believed that. And these are tough times. They're tough times to navigate through. And our commission meetings have become tougher. And I'm learning as I go, just like a lot of people, but I'm also trying to be very clear about expectations and then follow through with enforcing the rules that exist.
And then I do have one other question. It's not necessarily on topic of the commission meetings, but up through this point, through the end of June, this year has been far more violent than the past 3 years average. There have been 4 more homicides than the average. There have been over 110 more aggravated assaults. Property crimes are down with the exception of car theft, which is up 170 on that average.
Yeah.
What is your office and what does the city need to do to cut down on what has been a more crime-filled year than we've seen?
Yeah. Well, we saw an uptick in crime in 2020 as well. The numbers came down a little bit in 2021. And when you look at overall crime, I believe there's a number of factors that are impacting the current trend that we're seeing. And I believe that it really takes a multi-pronged approach to address crime and to prevent crime. It doesn't just live solely with the police department. We have a lot of community partners that we work with. We have neighborhood associations that we work with to do crime prevention, a lot of nonprofit organizations, and we need to continue to work together as a community. We need to make sure that we have a police department that is able to respond when they get a 911 call. They need to be able to respond quickly. And then we also have to put a lot of focus on prevention and then also trying to address what are the root causes of this crime spike that we're seeing and identify ways to work with our community partners to really try to address the core issues that are leading to the decisions that individuals are making to commit crimes.
What are some of those ways?
Yeah, so one initiative that we started about 6 months ago is with Urban League called Cure Violence, and that's an evidence-based crime prevention program. And so that is, 6 to 7 months underway. I'm very hopeful that we'll start to see the impact of that work. And then we've also looked at some of our services here at the city. So we've added a homeless outreach team. We've added additional behavioral health and mental health workers to our police department. We've added a victims services coordinator to reach out to victims and better serve them. And then also to look at what are some of the calls that we're getting where really it's a mental health crisis or a substance use crisis where we can respond differently, but also then free up time of our police officers to respond to the crimes where they do need to respond immediately that are less mental health, behavioral health focused. So in our recent budget, we supported additional funding for a mental health crisis team that will be getting off the ground in the next couple months. We've been partnering really closely with other jurisdictions to look at what are some of the patterns that we're seeing that aren't just within the city of Grand Rapids and looking at our collaboration with the other cities in the county. So there's a lot of work being done. Yesterday we supported funding for Boys and Girls Club, for the Children's Advocacy Center. Those are organizations that are doing really good work that we know are also part of the solution. And so we'll continue to fund them, but also partner with them as we look at how do we make sure that we're doing everything we can to support individuals.
Yeah, thank you. Eric, any questions you had? Anything you wanted to add?
All right. No, thank you. Thanks.
Appreciate the time.
Yeah.